So I'm Luke Westfall. There is another Luke in the same block as me doing a talk on AI. So if you want to hear a talk on AI, you're in the wrong room. But yeah, thank you all for coming. That's some pretty fierce competition. So glad we have a little bit of an audience. So from CAD to code, navigating a dynamic career pivot. So I'm going to kind of talk about my career transition into software engineering and share some tips and tricks that I learned along the way that could hopefully help you if you're thinking about something similar. So who am I? Again, Luke Westfall. Got a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and then more recently I got another one in software engineering. I'm currently working as a senior software engineer at CAD Americas, which is based in Mannheim. And we make cranes and hoists and things, and I'll get into that a little bit. But I started out there as a design engineer. Again, mechanical engineering is kind of where I started my career. And sometimes people put like headshots up on these kinds of slides. You have to stare at me for the next like 30 minutes or whatever, and so I'm not going to do that to you. Instead, I'll put a picture of my dog. He just had surgery this past week, so he's at home recovering, so sending him good vibes. So yeah, what are we talking about today? So this is especially geared for people who are thinking about a career change, or if you know someone who's thinking about a career change. I'm going to talk about tech a lot, obviously, but it doesn't have to be specific to tech. One of the questions that's probably going to come up is like, is this the right move? Like, am I sure that I really want to make a change? Maybe you feel secure in your current position. There's a lot of risk there. I'm going to keep the answer to that pretty simple. I think if you're asking yourself that question, the answer is probably yes. There is a risk of failure, but like it's all just part of the journey. So yeah, that's basically all I have to say about that. So we're going to talk about how we can overcome fear, taking risks, and embracing change, and kind of turning fear into excitement for that change. So again, I'm going to talk about some of the lessons I've learned. Some of this is going to be a little more applicable to very niche cases, but I'm going to talk about some very general techniques as well that anyone can use. How to get support and the right way to get support. I think there are some pitfalls there that we can steer around, and then especially taking action. So that's going to be a huge focus towards the end, is how do you actually start? So for me, again, I graduated as a mechanical engineer, started as a design engineer, and I designed cranes and crane accessories. So it's this kind of crane that they run kind of up in the ceiling usually. Not that kind of crane or that kind of crane or that kind of crane. Love the English language. So this was the first app that I wrote a few years in. So trying to find CAD drawings was really difficult at my job. Some companies, I'm sure, do it better, but we have these drawings. They're numbered 51,000 and then 3 digits, or 61,000 and 3 digits. The 51s are in the 51s folder. The 61s are in the 61s folder. The 62s are in the 52s folder. They're not in the 62s folder. Why? I don't know. It's just, that's how it was when I got there. So trying to memorize all these weird rules for how to find these drawings, just wasn't working for me. And it didn't work for our new people too. So I wrote this little app. It was just simple. You type in your drawing number and it opens it. Pretty simple. All those rules were distilled into code. It's really terrible code quality, by the way. I didn't know what I was doing. So if you know what a switch statement is, for branching logic, it's kind of like an if statement. And it was just 200 of those or something. Basically if, else if, if, else if. So yeah, really bad. But it worked. And notably, peers noticed. They would come up to my desk, they'd see me using this thing, and they'd say, hey, that's really cool. How do I get that? And they wanted more. They asked for more features, and I built those features in. So a couple years later, I kind of built on that app, wrote other kind of small apps. And we noticed we were spending a lot of time making CAD drawings to send to our customers. A lot of engineering hours, and engineering hours are really expensive. And we weren't charging those hours to the customer. These were for approval drawings. So in short, like, we weren't guaranteed to make this sale. We send this out to this customer, they take a look at it, does it meet our specifications? But they're looking at other companies too, other suppliers, they're shopping around. So we spent a lot of time on these drawings that don't always turn into sales, pretty expensive. So I discovered that our CAD software has APIs, and I was like, oh, like, you know, I'm kind of getting into this programming thing. I'm getting pretty good at it, I think. And there's a way to control the CAD software, like, from my own software. Like, we're just taking data from our online, like, configuration tool and by hand putting that into our drawings. Like, that sounds like something we can do automatically. We can automate this. So we did. We made a pitch to my manager. I said, I think I can do this. And he said, okay, I want you to take a month, and I want you to work on just that. And that was a big risk for him. Like, to take one of your engineers, because that's a limited resource, send them away for a month for something that might not work, that we've never done before, it's a big risk. But we took it. And it was incredibly successful. It's still being used today. It takes about a minute for our customers to get their drawing versus like a week-ish sometimes, depending. So not only are we saving hundreds of hours a year in engineering labor, but our customers, that's like, it's hard to quantify that value add when your customers can get a drawing like basically immediately. So that's the time when the management noticed that, and they wanted more. So we started automating 3D models and other types of things. And it just kind of, that's where it started to really spiral for me, in a good way. So transitioning to full-time software engineering, so that's what I'm doing full-time now. I've been doing that for a couple years. So we've had several high-risk, high-reward projects like that one, but others. A lot of like integrations into our ERP software. So for anyone unfamiliar with ERP software, it's kind of like the operating system for like manufacturing companies, or other types of companies too, but it's like kind of like the lifeblood. If you've heard of SAP, that's basically what that is. So more document automations, 1,000 plus. I think there's supposed to be more there. 1,000 plus like labor hours saved with that one. So every single hoist that we ship with a certificate saying this thing complies with ASME and OSHA and blah blah blah, and it's been load tested. So they were making those manually. They had to fill in serial numbers, dates, all of that. So that was another thing that I said, we can automate that. And we did. So over the past like 4 or so years that's been operating, our savings on that have gone well into the 7 figures, like easy. So that's at the point where the executives notice that kind of savings. The executives notice that, and they want more. So that kind of brings us to today. I got to hire 2 more people, so we have a small team now. We moved from our subsidiary, which is Harrington Hoists, into our kind of like North American parent company, Tito Americas, into the IT department out of engineering. And yeah, so I've kind of been growing into more of like a leadership role, kind of thinking about potentially management someday. And we're solving problems for the rest of the business now. So like when I started out, it was really kind of focused on engineering, like the stuff close to me, the stuff that I knew really well. And over time that kind of like built out into tools for our production department. And now we're writing software for like other subsidiaries in our group. And then we just merged like a year ago with this other company, the Crosby Group. So our corporation, like as a whole, like a global corporation, it basically doubled in size. So really excited about the future for that one. Obviously, like mergers are always a little bit scary, and it's all under private equity, so you never know what's going to happen there. But so far, so good. And yeah, just excited that for the opportunities that that might bring. So I wanted to cover a few of the really big challenges when I started my pivot. So the number one thing, especially in the very beginning, was resistant and like some people, just a few, small handful of people kind of doubting. That was a really interesting one. I don't know, I think for some people it might have been like kind of like an envy or a jealousy thing, or I don't know how many of you have heard at work, like, because that's the way we've always done it. That mentality was rampant. And that was, yeah, definitely challenging to get past. A lack of technical mentorship, so this is something I'm actually kind of still struggling with a little bit. Luckily we have an amazing community here, and I'm so lucky to have found these people, but like someone at work who knows the business and who knows how to write code and how to structure software, architect software, all that kind of thing, and also like technical leadership, which is something I'm trying to learn as I go. I don't / like didn't have someone really for that, so that was really hard. It's still really hard. And then what I call kind of like the reverse imposter syndrome, or like ego. So a lot of people, especially in our industry, are subject to imposter syndrome, basically like feeling like you don't belong and that everyone else around you is smarter than you and like I'm never going to be as good as them, blah, blah, blah. But in my situation, where I was like writing software that like people were like, we can do this? Like, Luke's a genius. Like, that goes to your head fast. And like, I got high on that. So that was definitely a challenge. That's something I had to kind of figure out. Like, so when I started to step out of that a little bit, especially when I started going to school, or going back to school, I should say, and then like, you know, this kind of community here, meeting other people in the industry, that humbles you really fast, which is good. I'm glad that happened. But at the same time, I think I was able to make those work for me. And I think this is something everyone can do. Like every challenge you run into, or almost every challenge, there's probably exceptions, but like the resistance and the doubt that I got from people, I use that as fuel. I was like, especially kind of combining that with that third, like that ego part, like when people say like, I don't think you can do that, I don't think that's gonna work, it's like, oh yeah? Like, I can, and I'm going to, and I did. And that, like, so that, I use that as fuel, like that drove me. Lack of technical mentorship. This one's a little bit hard to turn into a positive, or twist into a positive, but it did force me to learn how to learn. Just kind of being able to, like, go back to first principles on any topic, and just like, okay, like, I don't have someone to show me the ropes here, so I gotta start from step one and just continue. So, something I'm still trying to do now. And then, yeah, with the ego thing, like, I was confident, like I said, that I used that in combination with the fuel aspect to keep going, not get like discouraged. So just a few quick tips, and this is kind of the stuff that won't work for everyone. It's very situational. But if you can, start your pivot at your current place of work. If you're already employed and you have the ability to do this, I strongly recommend you do this. This really worked out well for me personally. You're basically getting paid to learn. Like, and if you're able to drum up some support from management to kind of help foster that, even better. Otherwise, do it in secret. But yeah, if you can do it at your current place of work. If it makes sense. It won't in every situation. So this kind of goes along the same lines, but look for ways to marry your existing skills with like your new requisite skills. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of like vision, but like when you see yourself in a few years from now, or whatever, however long that's going to take, like you want to figure out what skills you're going to need, of course, and try to find ways to marry your existing skills with that. I think like you can come up with some really interesting combinations of skills that like kind of like force multiply in a way that like can really make you succeed. So for me, that biggest example would be kind of combining like my CAD knowledge with like my new software knowledge. So not only did I learn a lot about software in that time, but it's like I already came in with the CAD skills, where someone who started out programming, they would have to learn CAD to kind of achieve the same goal. So yeah, really powerful and like really niche skill set that I think is valuable. So if you can combine those skills, you can they turn into like a new skill that's really marketable later. And don't get worried, okay? Don't get worried about doing everything right, or don't worry about doing everything right, especially your grammar. Should have spent more time proofreading, I guess. Yeah, don't worry about doing everything right. You just start. Like, just do something. I was just talking about this with Penny at lunch. Like, you can't get lost in the details. Like, I think it's so easy. You're thinking about a career pivot, maybe sometimes you're excited about it. It's like, okay, like, I've got some ideas on like how I'm gonna get started. But like, man, you think about like the end goal or like the vision and like what that means, and like I don't know how to break that out into concrete steps, and like I need to do all this planning. It's like you can get lost so easily, and that can freeze you. So I would encourage you, like, don't worry about doing everything right. Like, like I said, I wrote some really terrible code in the beginning, but it worked. And it's because like I just started doing something. I think that's super important, and we're going to come back to that in a little bit. But some other kind of like more general techniques. So reframing fear. So fear is excitement without the breath. This is a quote I found from Fritz Perl. I really like this quote. It's probably easier said than done, maybe to the point of like cliche, but I think it is something you can do. You can turn fear into excitement. But by being able to kind of just like sit with it and not avoid the fear, don't try to run away from that fear, run into it. You're embarking on something new, and there's risk, and that can be scary. But yeah, like I think those emotions kind of like come out of the same area in the brain, right? Like the amygdala or something. A lot of adrenaline, and that you can use that as like a force to keep you going. I really like this technique. It's called fear setting. So you've heard of goal setting, of course. There's a technique called fear setting. I think Tim Ferriss made this famous, or he invented it or something. He's got a really good TED Talk on it. There's a link at the end of the slides, which I'll share. But yeah, just like goal setting, but it's for your fears. And basically what he says to do is, you want to define, like, what are the worst possible outcomes? Like, what is the worst thing that could happen? So if I'm thinking about a career change, like, I might end up in a career that I hate. Or I might leave my job that I feel like financially secure at for something where it might be hard to find a job. Things like that. And then what can we do to prevent? Like for each of those like defined fears, what can we do to prevent or reduce the likelihood? Like how can we avoid the situation where those worst outcomes occur? And then repair. Even if they do, like despite our best efforts to prevent, even if they do happen, what can I do to fix them? And by the way, this is like a very literal practice. This isn't something to like think about and just like meditate on. Like you want to write this stuff down. You want to make 3 columns: define, prevent, repair. And then you also want to think about the cost of inaction. Like what's going to happen if you don't do anything? Like all of the, especially the like negative things, emotionally, physically, financially, there's a cost there. So I think when you're kind of lost in the fear, it's really easy to forget that last part, that like inaction also has a cost. Kind of touched on goals. Goals is kind of like the other side of this. So setting SMART goals. You might have heard about SMART goals before. It's kind of like all over the internet. I also linked an article on this if you've never heard of it before. But SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So specific, like this is like a concrete, like well-defined goal, like not something super vague or cloudy. You want it to be specific. Measurable, like you want to easily know, like have I completed this or not, or to what degree is this complete. Achievable, it needs to be realistic, right? Obviously, I think it's really easy to set these like super lofty goals that like you have no real chance of achieving. Like one of my like least favorite like non sequiturs or cliches is like you can do anything you put your mind to. It's like that's bullshit, right? Like you can't do anything you put your mind to. Like you can do a lot of things maybe, but there's gonna be things that you're incapable of. So achievable, relevant. So especially again, we're gonna talk about vision here in a second. So it should be relevant to what you want to do. It kind of sounds obvious, but I think it's easy to make this mistake where you're setting goals that like aren't actually propelling you towards like some end state, whatever that might be. And then time bound. Give yourself like a deadline, basically. And don't overdo it. Just a few at a time. Like I'm talking like 2 or 3, like small handful of goals to set for yourself. I think again, it's really easy to get lost. It kind of goes back to the kind of just starting kind of thing. It's really easy to get lost if you're setting too many goals for yourself. So just a few. Communication. So this is a tricky one. Tell someone about your goals. Someone, not everyone. So there's like published science about this, where if you tell everyone your goals, you go on social media and you say, I'm going to do this career change, like I'm finally going to do it, I've been thinking about it for a long time, blah, blah, blah. It sounds great. It gets like 1 million likes and all your friends are like, yeah, I knew you can do this, I know you can do it. And then like, there's some weird psychological thing that happens there where like, all those likes and reactions and comments and stuff, you're like, yeah, I feel good. And then you stop. You don't do anything real, and like that satisfies that like dopamine receptor or whatever in your brain. So you don't want to do that. You want to avoid doing that. But you want to tell someone, someone trustworthy, someone who's going to hold you to your goals, keep you accountable, and someone who understands the journey. Someone who's not going to prematurely celebrate your successes. Obviously, you want someone who can celebrate your successes too, but it needs to be appropriately timed. Because again, like you don't want that, that satisfaction of being done when you're not actually done. On the other hand, this might sound kind of like a contradiction, but learn in public. So what I mean by that is like, while you don't want to go out and tell everyone like all of your goals and dump your vision and everything and tell everyone what you want to do, instead you want to talk about just the things that you've learned in the last week or the last day or whatever, something that you've struggled with that you finally figured out or that you're continuing to struggle with, like speaking. So that's why I'm up here now. Like, this disclaimer probably should have gone in the beginning, but like, I'm not an expert. Maybe that's clear by now, but like, I'm up here trying to learn in public. So yeah, kind of two opposite ends of the same kind of communication topic. So here's where we get into the action. So start today. You can start today. I know we're busy, like, we've got CPAS, we've got the after party, some of us have traveled, we have to drive home. You can still start today. So I'm gonna tell you what I mean by that, what that looks like. So if you're looking to make a career change, this is what I want you to do. And I mean this like very literally, for real, like you should do this. What's your vision? Write it down. Or type it out. So for example, I'm going to be a software engineer. This is a vision I could have given to myself years ago. And the vision is, what's beautiful about the vision is it can be big. Unlike the goals, it can be kind of big. It can be like just simple, I'm going to be a software engineer. Like, I'm not going to be the best software engineer, or like, it doesn't have to be tailored to a specific discipline or anything. It can be, if you want it to be, if you know that's what you want, but it doesn't have to be. So you don't have to stress yourself over the vision. It's simple, it's big, that's fine. All the vision is for is helping to define that relevancy to your goals. Like, what am I shooting towards roughly? Because that path is going to change over time, like without you realizing it. So, some more things to do today. After you write your vision, write down realistic, achievable, and concrete goals you can complete in, and this is just a guideline I came up with. You can vary the timing of this depending on what you're doing. Maybe this isn't appropriate for everything. Remember SMART, again. But for example, in 1 week, write hello world in HTML and JavaScript to make it, I don't know, make it flash on the screen or something. Maybe you can do that in 1 week. In a month, maybe you write Comedy's Game of Life in JavaScript, something a little more complicated. You're going to have to do a little more research. 3 months, complete the Odin Project Foundations path. I don't know. These are just examples of things that might end up on someone's software engineering pivot. It doesn't have to be this. And again, it doesn't have to be this time. It's just an example. But write it down. And also write down the name of someone to keep you accountable. It could be your best friend. It could be your spouse. It could be one of your kids. It could be your manager. You want to be a little bit careful with that one. They have to support you and your vision and your goals. Obviously, if they might not be willing to do that so much if they expect you to kind of jump ship as soon as you're done. So be careful with that one. But it could apply. But most importantly, it should be someone reliable and someone you trust. Again. And if you don't have anyone, if like no one's coming to mind and you just need someone to bounce ideas off of, or to send you an email once a week or whatever, here's my email address. I'll be that person. That's fine. I think it's really important to have someone though, someone who can check up on you, or someone you can check in with and say, you know, I've been really struggling with keeping to my goals lately. So having someone to kind of talk you through that, I think can be really helpful. And then going forward, as you complete each of those goals, that like 1 week or 1 month, 3 months, whatever, set a new one for the same time frame. I think that's important, like to keep those, especially for those shorter interval ones. You want to keep setting that next goal. Like, what is the next thing I'm working on? Write those down. And if you miss one of your deadlines, like that's okay. You know, no one's going to yell at you, and that's kind of where like the support person comes in. You don't want someone who's going to like yell at you or be mean to you. It's okay. You can forgive yourself for that. That's fine. And later on, you might modify these time frames. Like as you start to build up more and more momentum, that 1 week goal that you're always setting maybe that's a little too short term. Like you've kind of figured out how to do that a little more, kind of like autonomously. And now you're looking out 1 month ahead and 6 months and a year. That's totally fine. Again, those timelines, like those are for you to set. But I think it's good to start on those short intervals for the purpose of like getting started and kind of like getting that feeling of satisfaction more quickly. And then as you go, reevaluate. Just make sure, you know, kind of check in with yourself. Am I happy with doing this? Like, it's probably going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. It's not supposed to be easy or fast. So don't confuse those feelings for like, what am I, like, this doesn't make any sense at all, what am I doing? But check in with yourself. Maybe you're not sure. Like, consider changing the vision if you're not sure, if it's something that's been weighing on you. Pivot again. You can kind of move around. I already mentioned that path is probably going to change. So yeah, that's okay. Like you don't have to stick to that thing if you feel like, actually maybe this isn't the right thing for me. You're in charge. And that's it. Any questions?
Can you share more about the process of hiring other software engineers as a newly minted software engineer?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because so one of them, it was more we got sort of the blessing, if you will, from management. They realized especially from the executives. The management went to the executives and said, "Listen, like you've seen what Luke's been doing. Like we can really use more people to develop more of this automation and stuff, gain more efficiency, save more money. Like we should grow this into a group, into a team." That was a collaboration between me and my manager at that point, once he kind of got that approval. So going through the resumes and stuff, I mean, I was involved with the interview process, but I wasn't like involved in like the having to like deal with the HR side of things. That was more my manager, which was nice. It made it like, yeah, I get to interview people and like look at resumes and then, you know, give my opinion on who I think we should hire. So that was for one of them. We ended up hiring one that way. The other was a little bit interesting because he was hired, the third engineer was hired through our IT department while I was still in engineering. And I think there was like a little bit of like political weirdness with that because they saw what we were doing and they kind of wanted to like have some level of control over like software at the company. But we ended up combining those groups eventually, so it all worked out. But yeah, that third engineer was definitely, I wasn't involved in that hiring process. So.
What's one thing that all software engineering students or software engineers should learn from mechanical engineers?
Ooh, that's a really good question. That is a really good question. I mean, I can talk more easily about like the skills that transferred really easily for me, or like I think so. Software engineering is a really common endpoint for mechanical engineers. Actually, like I'm like a walking trope. Okay, like so many mechanical engineers and electrical engineers, by the way, like a lot of them end up in software at some point. So like I'm not like super unique in that like career path. But I think a lot of like the problem solving skills that I learned as a mechanical engineer transfer really, really well to software engineering. And like some of them are like unique enough that like you probably wouldn't get those organically, so to speak, through like your average like software engineering curriculum or in like a boot camp or something like that. There's just like certain weird skills that I learned as a mechanical engineer that yeah, translate really well, but like are sort of unique too. So it's hard to say what like a software engineering student can learn from a mechanical engineer. Yeah, I mean, other than yeah, I think just like focus on the problem solving. I think that's just kind of like the common trait that all good engineers have, regardless of whether or not you're mechanical or electrical, software, whatever. Like we're all just solving problems at the end of the day, and like technical problems. So being effective at that, yeah, I think that's like the biggest thing.
What was your second degree in? Was it in?
That was in software engineering.
Okay. So
Yeah.
did you choose to go get a second degree versus a boot camp, or was it something your company's like, we're an engineering company, we need to make sure that we can stamp that you are officially?
Yeah, so it was all my own choice. It made a lot of sense for me because work was willing to pay for most of it, or like half of it. So I think that's another reason why being able to get support from your current employer is like super important. if you do decide to go back to school. I could have very easily just like not done that and still been a successful software engineer. I think a lot of people are already aware of this, probably appreciate the choir, but like you don't need to go to college to be a great software engineer by any means. It's just something I did because I had the time, I guess. Like I'm not married, I don't have kids, like so that wasn't a worry. And like work was willing to pay for some of this, so I was like, yeah, just why not, kind of thing.
Regarding that last question, what do you think of the title software engineer as opposed to mechanical engineer? There are clearly defined things you need to do to be a mechanical engineer, but if you can hack around adequately, you can call yourself a software engineer. So talk about the difference between those two.
Yeah, the word engineer, I mean, that would be a great talk on its own, I think. Because like, you think back to the origin of that term, I think it comes from like train engineers, right? They were like, shoveling coal into boilers or something and pulling levers and tooting horns and now it's like evolved into, at one point it evolved into the more like the mechanical or like the civil, electrical, and now it's made its way into software in the last last few decades it has, I think, at least in the mainstream. I don't know, like, while I place a lot of my identity in, or like, the word engineer plays a large part of my identity in so many ways, but at the same time I kind of hate the word, like, it's just, yeah. And then it's like, it's weird too, because in other countries, the title of engineer in any context is like a protected title. You need a license to legally call yourself an engineer. It's not like that in the United States, unless you call yourself a professional engineer. So, I don't know, it's just one of those words that has a lot of like weird connotations that I think drive a lot of questions like that. Like, what are the similarities between software engineers and mechanical engineers or electrical engineers? I think like, at the end of the day, it's being able to solve problems, like being able to solve technical problems. It's super vague, and I guess that's why we kind of have those like qualifiers of mechanical and electrical. It narrows it down a little bit, but yeah, I don't know, I don't like the word.
One more quick question, and then
Zach?
So seeing Cody's talk and your talk, one of the commonalities was like your just start slides of like the thing that you built that was like unique to you, very personal, like I have this problem and I want to solve it. I don't necessarily have the skills to solve it yet, but I'm going to get those skills because it's my problem and I need to solve it. And anecdotally, having taught students, seeing ones that have succeeded versus others that have failed, the ones who have succeeded have all kind of found their own little projects of things that they cared about. So how would you give advice for people who are trying to like sort through the cruft of like my first resume, portfolio project, or whatever crap they tell you to put on your resume now to find your project?
I would say like if you're at the point where you're kind of struggling to figure that out, maybe it's too soon to be even thinking about that at all. Like just start with something smaller. Like you can start super small, super basic. Like as long as you're starting, like it might be like embarrassingly simple, and that's okay. But it's like it's just a nudge to get the ball rolling a little bit, and then maybe the next thing you're either building on top of that same project to make it a little more complex, or maybe you're switching to a new thing. But like with the you want it to trend to be like a little more ambitious every time. But yeah, start off like super simple. Like that's what I would say. So yeah, if you're bogged down by like, oh my gosh, what do I need to do to like fill out my portfolio? You're probably a little too soon. Like I think that's gonna come. That's gonna come naturally as you complete more and more projects. Great question.
all right, let's give Luke a round of applause.